Buying a house in 2025 is such an exciting goal, and arming yourself with concise and accurate information is the best place to start. So today we're going to talk about how much money can you borrow depending on where you're looking. And yes, location does matter. How much cash do you need ready to go? Not just for your down payment, but also potential closing costs. And lastly, I want to cover some tips that not a lot of agents talk about, but they can save you thousands of dollars and or be the difference between you closing on a house or not. So let's get started. Hey there, welcome back to my channel and Happy New Year. I hope that 2025 is off to a great start for you. I'm Erika Monroe. I'm a realtor in the Bay Area and I specialize in Solano County. If you're planning to buy a house in 2025, you're probably going to start with deciding on location. And that location may actually dictate how much money you can borrow. Every year, a national conforming or standard loan limit is set based on current home values. From there, each county is reevaluated to see if it's considered a high cost of living area. Now there's one for conventional buyers and there's one for FHA. I don't want to go into the differences of the two loans. If you need a refresher, check out the video above where I break everything down for you. Conventional, remember, is private lending. It's a little bit harder to qualify for. You are going to have a higher loan limit for Solano County. This year it's set at $806,500. Now for FHA borrowers, it's usually a little easier to qualify. You can have a lower credit score and a higher debt to income ratio. Your set limit for Solano County is going to be $685,400. Now keep in mind, you'd still have to qualify for this amount. Just because you're shopping in that county does not automatically mean that you can borrow up to that amount. Now this is really important information, especially if you are searching in different counties. If you're also looking in Napa County, for example, that is deemed a high cost of living area, whereas Solano County is not. So in Napa County, you can borrow more money. It's just north of $1 million if you qualify. And in Solano County, remember that we're set at $806,000. So if a lender doesn't know that, they may tell you, yes, you are qualified to buy a $1.3 million house, but they don't realize that you're shopping in Solano County where you'd have to come up with an extra $200,000, right? That's the difference between Napa County's set limit versus Solano County's set limit. So make sure they provide you with two different pre-approval amounts depending on the county that you're searching in. VA buyers, I haven't forgotten about you. If you have full entitlement, you simply do not have a county loan limit that you have to worry about. You of course have to be able to qualify for the amount that you're borrowing, but you don't have to worry about trying to figure out the difference in each county. Let's move on. How much cash do you need saved, ready to go to buy a house? We're going to cover several different price points. This is based on the absolute minimum you'd need to have. And just keep in mind, until you talk to a lender, you specifically won't know for your file or situation how much cash you need. This is a great place to start. For conventional buyers, looking at this chart, I've based this on a 3% down payment. That is the minimum down payment, if you qualify, that you'd be able to make. So you can see we've started at $600,000 all the way to about $1 million. Now for FHA buyers, you have to place at least 3.5% down. So again, taking the same home values, this is roughly the amount of money you'd have to have set, ready to go as your minimum down payment. VA buyers, technically you can come to the table with a 0 down payment, unless of course you are purchasing a house that's more expensive than what you qualify to borrow. Then you would have to come to the table with additional cash. And you're likely going to have other expenses such as inspections, appraisal, and closing costs. Now let's talk about closing costs. In my opinion, this is not discussed enough. Average closing costs can range anywhere from 1% of the purchase price up to 6% of the purchase price. Now closing costs encompass a variety of different fees and taxes. You have things like your title and escrow fees. Remember, escrow is that neutral third party that helps us through the process of closing. You're gonna have lender origination fees, prepaid property taxes, 1 year's worth of homeowner's insurance. And you may also have agent commission. FHA buyers might have higher closing costs because you have an additional fee that you have to pay upfront at closing. Sometimes you have the ability to wrap these into the full amount of your loan, but it's going to depend on your file and what your lender allows. Now, there are ways to mitigate these closing costs. New home sales, for example, new construction, often they have some closing cost credit that they'll offer to the buyer to help reduce the amount of cash you have to have. Remember, take an agent with you if you're going to go to new construction, because if you go alone, you're going to waive your right to any sort of representation. You're not going to have a skilled set of eyes to help you sort through that contract and make sure you understand exactly what you're agreeing to. Some sellers as well are very motivated, and they may be offering some concessions as well. They may help cover some of your closing costs. And when we're in months such as now, it's generally a little bit easier to make these negotiations or requests with sellers or new homes, because historically this is a quieter time of year and they want to make sure that they're continuing to keep their numbers up, or for a private seller, of course, they're going to be motivated to go ahead and close and move on to their next chapter in life. Let's move on to my pro tips. I'm really excited to share this information in hopes that it'll prevent you from overpaying, and it could be the difference between you closing on a house or not. So I just covered closing costs, but did you know that depending on what county you're buying in, your closing costs could change? And I want to preface this information by saying there is no set standard. Everything in real estate is negotiable. That being said, I think it's really important for you to understand historic patterns and formulas for what buyers have historically paid versus what sellers have historically paid. And that'll give you the insight into understanding how to be competitive in a specific market. At the end of the day, it's your offer. You get to decide what you're comfortable paying and what you're not. But having this information is vital, especially if you are competing against several other buyers. For example, historically, Solano County has not been as competitive of a market as Contra Costa or Alameda counties. So buyers have not had to be as aggressive in their offers. They haven't had to offer to cover as many things in their closing costs as a buyer in these other counties. Solano County, commonly the buyer covers title and escrow fees, but in return the seller has covered transfer tax fees. And if they're selling in Vallejo, they also have a city transfer tax fee, which could be a couple $1,000s. In our neighboring counties that are more competitive, we've often seen the buyer willing to split the city transfer tax fee, and that can be significant. Let's just say you're a buyer in El Cerrito, which is Contra Costa County. You're buying a house for $1 million. They will have a city transfer tax fee that is $12,000. That would be an additional $6,000 that you would have to pay as a buyer. Now, if your agent predominantly works in these more competitive markets, but they're also helping you write an offer in Solano County, they may not be aware that that's not typically a requirement of the buyer to pay. That could cost you a couple $1,000s. There are other components of potential closing costs, such as sewer lateral repairs, sewer lateral replacement. It could be a gas shutoff valve. There are certain components that are requirements of these other counties that again are not requirements of Solano County at this time. Work with a local agent who understands the nuances of each county and what the typical closing costs are. My final pro tip is actually a brand new development in our industry, and some agents have yet to experience it. It has to do with homeowners insurance. As you know, it's become increasingly more difficult in California to attain homeowners insurance and get it at a reasonable rate. Well, let me add the cherry on top. Some insurance companies now are sending out their own inspectors to the house that you're trying to buy, or they may fly drones over the house that you're in contract for, and then suddenly send you a list of repairs that you need to complete in order for them to agree to insure your home. This has never been part of the process before. This is definitely coming as a surprise to many contracts and agents. And if you had already investigated your property, if you were happy with the condition of home, if you were comfortable knowing that you had a good insurance quote and weren't expecting them to send a list of repairs, you may have already removed your contingencies. in which case the seller's not on the hook to make these repairs. It would be up to you to make the repairs, and if you didn't have the money, you may have to cancel the contract, especially if the seller's not willing to work with you, and your earnest money deposit, your hard-earned money, may be at risk. So once you get into contract, immediately talk to your insurance company, get a better understanding of their process and what they're going to require in order to agree to insure, and get clarity from your lender on what it is they need as far as proof of insurance. If you follow through and do these right at the beginning, you're probably going to be safe. You're probably going to get all the information before having to consider removing your contingencies. Now you have a great starting off point to be a successful buyer in 2025. Check out my videos above to further educate yourself on the process, and always feel free to reach out to me if you need any assistance.